I like the idea that the Titans have a more natural form, and that at some point they were driven past this natural form and decided to pursue something beyond what they normally would do. I don't think that Aman'Thul is necessarily inherently some evil bad guy. I don't think that Eonar is inherently some evil bad guy. I don't think that Sargeras is inherently... I just don't believe in that concept. Like, I think that things happen that make people steer in paths to do bad things, and like, we make the choices ultimately, but like, I don't think that you're just born evil. Like, I understand that that like there are beings in D&D and stuff that are classified as like evil by nature, like demons, right? Like, I understand that. I'm not going to deny the existence of that type of like concept for a fantasy universe, but I guess I more so fuck with the idea that like I look at the Shadowlands as like a fractal for what the Titans have done. So if you're telling me that the guy with the long beard, master tactician guy that looks like Aman'Thul, basically worked with the others to imprison the one who was looking at the cosmos and saying, hold on a second, the design here is not quite right. Something about this, something's not quite right, seems off. Exact same thing that happened to Sargeras, okay? So he does this, he commits some type of crime that is some unspeakable act, and therefore is punished for it. In the case of Sargeras, it's left considerably more ambiguous because it sounds like Sargeras isolates himself from the Titan Pantheon and then falls to darkness kind of as a result of those choices. Whereas Zoval is positioned to have kind of made this philosophical decision, and the others have basically said, you're not gonna fucking do that. Instead, actually, we're gonna bind you and lock you in hell for eternity. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that there's a possibility that the Titans also tried to do that to Sargeras. So, like, let's not rule that out, because these are fractals. And so you're telling me that this guy with mega domination power, who, for all intents and purposes, is basically the leader of the others at this fucking point, you're telling me that he imprisons this guy for what he's done, and then essentially gains access to the realm of their creation, a realm that he never was supposed to get access to, that none of them were ever really supposed to get access to, unlocks the forbidden power of First One's magic, and then seeks to basically manipulate his way to victory. So if you look at it on the other side, here's the pot. We also go in there and we see that there's an earlier iteration of these constructs, which were then imbued with a cosmic soul that gave birth to the entities that we know as the Eternals. So if their souls can be taken from their bodies and then put into other bodies, then I'm gonna go ahead and say that that's probably a fractal for something that the Titans did. Where the Titans probably, I like the idea that in accessing Zereth Ordis, they did a very similar thing, where they kind of access this forbidden realm. In chat, what I believe is, at least what I think would be a really cool plot line, would be if the Titans got access to Zereth Ordis, and then, in their arrogance, sought to reforge themselves in their creator's image. That is to say, that's why the Titans appear as stars and constellations, because they're imitating what created them, okay? And so I like the idea that if you were to go to the realm of your origination and literally reforge yourself using the same mechanisms that were used to create you in the first place, then that could have a relatively adverse effect on your attitude, on your actions, on maybe your emotions, and I think that reforging yourself as such would be incredibly dangerous. And I think that if someone were to do that, that could be why they act the way they do, or why they are working together in the way that they are, because they have basically bound their natures together. And at this point, they're all at the core kind of like a similar being. In fact, if you look at the Titans when they arrive on the seat of the Pantheon, they all look identical, with the exception of their silhouette, which is loosely different depending on who you look at, but internally they all look the same. Now, people say they are constellars. Stop it. Like, let's chill with that. We don't know that. We don't know that. We don't know that the Titans are Constellars. What I think would be better, because I don't like that personally, I think it makes more sense if the Constellars were adherents and those who were meant to look over Zareth Ordis, which I think makes complete sense. Like, if they're the keepers of Zareth Ordis, and they're the ones that are supposed to uphold that realm and keep it doing what it's doing, if the Titans show up and they see these star-like beings doing whatever they're doing, like, there's also the fact that Norganon shares his naming scheme with every single Constellar. So, you know, there's could be something there too. So, do you think the Titans' bodies are robots underneath the way Zoval and the prototypes in the Sepulchre were? Yeah, probably. Probably. Well, no, I don't think that the Titans' bodies are robots. No. I think the Titans' bodies are energy. I think the Titans, in a way, are almost like ethereals, where I don't actually think I don't even know if you would classify it as a body. I think it's more like they're made out of pure energy, which is like a weird thing to consider. Like elementals, but instead of fire, water, they're made of order. Perhaps, I don't know. I would like to know what that bluish energy of the Celestials actually is. Like, is it order? I mean, is it basically just connected points of, I mean, is that like a mathematical, I mean, it's like astronomical. It has to do constellations, straight lines, the points between the area between points, vectors. It's very mathematic, isn't it? I don't know if I can take it that far, but when you look at the construction of the Titans, even that is like a construction of order. Simple points and lines connecting them, you know? The magic in World of Warcraft is fascinating, and I think that it's often a mistake to look at magical manifestations like Holy Light, Void, Fel, etc. as pure and actual expressions of the cosmological force. And we've been through this before, but it's like the concept of anima. All of the anima, all the souls coming into the Shadowlands have this white, ghostly kind of look to them, and they funnel down into the Arbiter, right? It's not until this energy is sent to the different realms and different methods of extracting power from said energy are used that it takes a different form. And so what that implies, and as Steve Denuser has confirmed before, is that the realm itself is having an influence on the manifestation of the energy. That is to say that the energy all exists as the same energy at a base level. It's all identical, with the exception of one, which was Argus, which flew in red and bright and different, so clearly that's different. But all of this, or maybe morphed in a different way, but all of the energy is actually the same. And think about the cosmological forces. Okay, here's how I try to look at it. Magic in WoW is an energy. And like the Shadowlands, the different realms exerting their influence on said energy creates magic. And they look different. So the strands of anima from Revendreth look different from Maldraxxus. The reason why is not because they're different magics. No, it's because the methods and influence of the so-called kind of hypothetical cosmological force that is each Shadowlands zone is affecting it differently. Now, I would ask you, and I've asked this before on stream, what would be the root of all magic in the cosmos? Souls, okay? Souls, the mortal soul, Titan souls, demon souls, dragon souls, world souls. The soul is the source of all magic in the cosmos. And so, if you use fel magic to basically destroy a soul to fuel these kind of chaotic flames of life, even though they're often looked at as entropic death flame, not so sure that that's exactly the case, actually. They could be, but I digress. The point more so is that in the same way, light and void are not necessarily as a core energy that different from one another. They're powered from the same fucking thing. The difference is that there is potentially a cosmological force, an influence, a method of manipulating the energy that's already there, and that manifestation is what we know as magic. Does that make sense? And I think it's important to potentially identify this distinction, because if this is true, then it lends credence to the idea that there is kind of a universal soul, there is kind of a universal oneness in our perception, and by the way that others have interacted with the cosmos, is that everything is separate and opposite and different from one another. But that's not necessarily true. That, as we have learned, life and death are bound together in a cycle. Light and void are bound together in a cycle. Order and chaos are bound together in a cycle. However, it does appear that the most powerful cycle to manipulate, because you are directly manipulating the state of all energy and its movement in the cosmos via mortal souls, is that if you control the flow of life and death, i.e. the dream and the Shadowlands, then you kind of can conceptually control the flow of all power in the cosmos. You can design mechanisms which stop the flow of souls to different realms, and, to allow that energy to basically go out and to saturate and to spread and to basically, well, through the means of entropy, find its place in the system. And so if you were really wanting to be a tyrannical overlord god, what you would do is you would halt the flow of souls. And in doing so, you would gain control over basically the power flow of the universe. And so that's why the Titans are such a threat, is because I believe that they have done so. The Titans have done a better job than any other cosmological representation at controlling or gaining control over the actual mechanisms of the cycle. So that's what makes them so dangerous. Now, does that mean that the Titans are inherently evil? Not necessarily. There are reasons for which the Titans could seek to do such things, one of which could be simply out of fear. Fear of their own end, fear of the cycles turning, fear of the idea that if Azeroth is the creator, that if she is allowed to awaken, that they may go to sleep, indefinitely, or however long that might be, and that could very well scare them. There is also the other twisted possibility that the Titans have been doing all of this as a means by which they can kill themselves. Because I've discussed this at length before, perhaps we are not the only ones who feel like, or conceptually can identify in some way, that we are in prison. And so that is to say that, maybe the Titans also feel like they're in prison, or a prison of some sort. And there are two interpretations, of course, at least, where on one hand, you see the Titans as prison builders, and on the other hand, you see them maybe as prisoners. And then I think you have to ask yourself the question, is there a truth in there maybe as well, that they are prisoners, but maybe of their own making? Like maybe they did something that kind of trapped them in this infinite cycle as well, and they want out of it. Maybe that was swearing fealty to life, and by swearing to protect life wherever possible, maybe they bound themselves to a code of temperance and oaths which do not allow them to act as they normally would. Maybe in this way, it is how ANR has control over them. Not by literal mind control, but by kind of a political and kind of, maybe even in a way, almost, I don't even want to say religious, but philosophical kind of binding to them, and maybe they want out too. I think the only one that doesn't want out is ANR, personally. I think she's the one that wants to keep the cycle probably repeating infinitely, and I think that she's using Amun Thul to accomplish that. But again, I can't really prove that. So